The worst part isn't the anger, it's the 90 seconds afterwards. The room has gone quiet, somebody's face has changed, and you can already feel the size of the gap between what actually happened and how hard you came down on it. You're going to be replaying this at 2 in the morning for about a week. And the promise you make in that moment is always the same one. I need to stop being like this. Here's the strange thing. Aristotle would tell you that promise is the reason it keeps happening. Not because anger is fine, he was harder on badly aimed anger than most people you'll meet, but because he thought the goal of getting rid of it was the wrong goal, and chasing a wrong goal for years is how a problem survives. He had a specific claim about this, and it's going to sound wrong at first. Aristotle thought the person who never gets angry is not the healthy one. He thought there was something missing in them. The word in his text gets translated as slavish, and he says plainly that such people are considered fools, because if you can watch your family be insulted, or watch something plainly unjust happen in front of you and feel nothing, that isn't peace. Something isn't working. So if the answer isn't less anger, what is it? It helps to picture the thing you're actually dealing with, not a fire to put out and not a pressure to release. Something closer to an animal walking beside you, heavy, strong, entirely capable of dragging you off the road and not going anywhere. You don't kill it. You're not going to. What you can do is hold the rope and learn where you're both going. That's what taming means here, and it's worth being clear about it, because the word gets misheard. A tamed animal isn't a broken one. It hasn't lost any of its strength. It just isn't the one deciding the direction anymore. His answer is that anger has an aim, and aim can be trained. He lists 5 things that have to be right, and the useful discovery, the thing that changes how you see your own temper, is that almost nobody is wrong on all 5. Most people are wrong on 1, sometimes 2. Which means I'm an angry person is almost always a misdiagnosis. Let me show you the 5 and you'll probably recognize yours before I finish. Start with what anger actually is, because most advice treats it as a substance, pressure in a tank, something that builds up and has to be released. Aristotle didn't think that. In the Rhetoric, he defines it precisely. Anger is a desire for redress, accompanied by pain, in response to a conspicuous slight against you or those close to you. Sit with the shape of that for a second. It contains a claim. Anger says, something happened here that shouldn't have, and it diminished me or someone I care about. That's not a mood. That's a judgment about the world. It has content, and content can be right or wrong, which is why anger doesn't behave like weather. You can be furious at a person and completely calm 10 seconds later when you learn a fact that changes what the event meant. The feeling collapses because the judgment underneath it collapsed. Weather doesn't do that. And this is the first thing the standard advice gets wrong. If anger is pressure, the answer is release or suppression, and both leave the judgment untouched. If anger is a judgment, the question isn't how to discharge it. It's whether it's accurate, and if it is, what it's asking you to do about it. That reframe costs you something, though, because it means you can't dismiss your own anger as a malfunction anymore. Some of it is information. Now the part that sounds wrong. Aristotle thought virtues sit between 2 failures, one of too much and one of too little. Courage sits between cowardice and recklessness, and the virtue about anger, which gets translated as good temper or mildness, sits between 2 failures as well. Everyone knows the excess, the person who goes off too fast, too hard, at everything. Almost nobody thinks about the deficiency. Aristotle did. He describes people who don't get angry at the things they should be angry at, who take an insult and feel nothing, who watch someone they love get treated badly and simply absorb it. And he does not call this being above it all. He says, such a person is thought to be a fool. He uses a word that means slavish. That's a hard line, and I don't think it's cruelty. I think it's this. If nothing can offend you, then nothing matters enough to you to be offended on behalf of. Compare that to the advice you'll actually get. The Stoics, Seneca especially, who wrote an entire book called On Anger, argued the opposite. Anger, he said, is temporary madness, and the fix is to root it out entirely. That view has almost completely won. It's underneath nearly every video and article you'll find on this. Aristotle thinks that's a mistake, and not a small one, because a person who has trained themselves out of anger hasn't become wiser. They've become someone who can be walked over and won't notice. Now, this does not license anything. Aristotle is not saying express whatever you feel. He's making a much narrower claim. The target isn't zero. And if you've been aiming at zero and repeatedly failing, you have not been failing at self-control. You've been failing at an impossible task and then punishing yourself for it. So what's the actual target? Here's the line. This one is genuinely Aristotle from the Nicomachean Ethics. Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. Read quickly, it sounds like a nice, balanced sentiment. Read slowly, it's a diagnostic tool, and it's the most practical thing in this video. Because notice what it does. It takes the thing you've been treating as one dial, how angry am I and how do I turn it down, and breaks it into 5 separate settings. Person, degree, time, purpose, way. That's why the volume knob approach never worked for you. You've been adjusting the wrong control. If your problem is the target, turning the volume down doesn't fix the target. It just makes you quietly wrong instead of loudly wrong. Let's go through them, because you're going to recognize one. This is the most common failure and the least noticed. Anger has a strong tendency to land not on whoever caused it, but on whoever is safest. Something happens at work. You can't say anything there. There's a cost, and you can feel exactly how much it would cost. So it stays. And then somebody at home asks a completely ordinary question in a completely ordinary tone and gets a response calibrated for an entirely different conversation. The tell is the mismatch. If the size of your reaction doesn't match the size of what just happened, the anger is almost certainly about something else. It's landed on the wrong person, because the wrong person was available and the right one wasn't. The other version of this is anger aimed at yourself. Same failure, different direction. Something happened. Some of it wasn't yours. And you've routed all of it inward because you're the one target you never have to be afraid of. And watch how precisely it selects. You don't snap at the person who could fire you. You don't snap at the stranger who might snap back. You snap at the person who has given you the most evidence that they'll still be there afterwards. Anger goes where it's cheapest, and the people who love you are, in that specific and awful sense, the cheapest place to put it. Which means the people getting the worst of your temper are often getting it precisely because they're safe. That's not a comfortable thought. It is a useful one, because it tells you the reaction was never really about them, and they are not the variable to change. Getting the person right is the least glamorous fix here, and probably the highest value. It usually means having a harder conversation with someone who can actually change the thing. Proportion. This is the one people think of as the whole problem, and it's really only a fifth of it. The overreaction is easy to picture because you have one, some small domestic thing, the same small thing probably, for years, And the response arrives with a force that would be perfectly appropriate if the dish in the sink were a statement of contempt, which is exactly what it has quietly become in your head. But proportion has a second failure that gets ignored: underreacting. And underreacting is harder to see because it doesn't look like a failure. It looks like being reasonable. Someone says something at a family dinner that lands badly, and you let it go, because making it a whole thing would ruin the evening. Everyone agrees you handled it well, and the next year the same person says the same kind of thing, because nothing in that room ever indicated they shouldn't. Aristotle would say, both are misses. We only ever talk about one of them. And there's a hidden connection. Chronic underreaction is what builds the reservoir that later overreacts. The person who never says anything small ends up saying something enormous. Small, accurate anger prevents large, inaccurate anger. That's not a paradox, it's a maintenance schedule. Two failures here, and they're opposites. Too quick, reacting before you know what happened. Half of what makes people ashamed later isn't that they were angry. It's that they were angry at a version of events that turned out to be incomplete. A tone you misread. A message that meant something else. A decision that had a reason nobody had told you yet. The anger may even have been the right shape. It just arrived before the facts did. Too long is the more expensive one, and it looks completely different from the inside. It doesn't feel like anger at all. It feels like a fact about someone. You're not aware of being angry at them. You simply know what they're like, and you've known it for 3 years, and the knowing costs you something every time their name comes up. Aristotle names these people. He describes the bitter kind who hold on to their anger and can't let it go until they've paid it back, and he notes that they're heavy company, hardest on themselves and on the people closest to them. That's the answer to something people ask constantly. How do you stop being angry all the time? Being angry all the time is almost never about the volume of things happening. It's duration. It's a small number of things that never got closed, still running, still costing. An anger that has done its job ends. If yours doesn't end, it hasn't been given a job, which is exactly this test. What is the anger for? There's a version that wants the situation changed, the thing acknowledged, the behavior stopped, the arrangement fixed. It's directed at an outcome, so it has a finish line, and once it's reached, the anger genuinely goes. And there's a version that wants the other person to feel bad. That one has no finish line, because there's no amount of them feeling bad that completes it. That's the anger that lasts years. Two people can be angry about the identical thing and want completely different endings. One wants the schedule changed so it stops happening. The other wants the person to understand exactly how much it cost and to sit in that for a while. The first is finished the moment the schedule changes. The second is never finished, because understanding isn't a thing you can verify, so there's always a reason to keep going. And the second one disguises itself well. It borrows the language of the first. It says, I just want them to realize, which sounds like an outcome and isn't one, because there's no observable event that counts as them having realized enough. Here's a test you can run on yourself in the moment. If the other person did exactly what you want right now, changed the behavior, acknowledged the thing, would you be satisfied? Or would you still want them to have suffered for it first? That question is uncomfortable on purpose. Most of the anger people can't put down fails it. The last one is delivery, and it's the smallest, which surprises people. Same accurate anger at the right person, in the right proportion, at the right moment, aimed at fixing the thing, can still be delivered in a way that guarantees nothing changes. Take one real sentence. I need you to tell me when you're going to be late. That's accurate, proportionate, aimed at the right person, and aimed at fixing the thing. Now deliver it as contempt. Same words, different weight on them, one small edge of obviously, and the sentence stops being a request and becomes a verdict about their character. Everything after that is about the verdict. The schedule never comes up again. You had the content right and lost it in transmission. The other person is now defending themselves and nobody is listening. Aristotle's point is not about being nice, it's about efficacy. If the purpose is redress, then a delivery that makes redress impossible has defeated its own purpose. You've kept the feeling and thrown away the function. Now go back and look at the 5 together. Person, degree, time, purpose, way. Almost nobody is wrong on all 5. Read them again and you'll find 1 or 2 that describe you and the rest that don't. That's the actual shape of the problem, and it's a completely different problem from the one people think they have. Try it while they're still fresh. Go back through the last handful of times you were angry, not the dramatic ones, the ordinary ones, and for each, ask which of the 5 actually failed. Most people find the same one keeps coming up. That repetition is the finding. It isn't a personality, it's a single misset control that's been quietly producing most of the damage, hiding behind a much larger and much less useful story about the kind of person you are. I'm an angry person is a claim about what you are. It offers nothing to do. It's the same trap as I'm not confident or I'm bad with people. It takes a specific, fixable aim and turns it into an identity, and identities don't have next steps. I aim at the wrong person when I've been holding something in is a claim about a pattern. It's smaller, less dramatic, and unlike the first one, it can be worked on. Which brings us to the last thing, and it's the part Aristotle is most insistent about. You don't fix any of this by resolving to. Aristotle's whole account of character is that we become what we repeatedly do. We become just by doing just things, brave by doing brave things. The disposition is the residue of the practice, not the source of it, which means the aim of your anger is also a trained thing, not a fact about you, a setting you've rehearsed, mostly by accident, over years. And it gets retrained the same unglamorous way. Not by a decision at 2 in the morning, by the 20th time you notice in the moment that the person in front of you isn't the one you're actually angry at, and say something slightly different than you would have. You won't feel different while doing it. That's not a sign it isn't working. It's what practice feels like from the inside, at every skill anyone has ever learned. So the promise to make isn't the one from the 90 seconds after. Not I need to stop being like this. That target is 0. 0 isn't available, and aiming at it has produced years of failing and calling the failure a character flaw. The target is aim. Right person, right degree, right time, right purpose, right way. Pick the one that's actually yours. You already know which, and work on that one, badly, for a while. Your anger was never the problem. It's a judgment that something was wrong, and sometimes it's correct. What it's been missing is direction, and direction is the one thing here that can be taught. The animal doesn't leave. It was never going to. It just stops being the one choosing the road. There's a question underneath all of this that Aristotle answers elsewhere, though, how you're supposed to know which things genuinely deserve your anger and which ones only feel like they do. That's a whole argument of its own, and it's the one to watch next. See you next video.